All right, noting the hour, the presence of a quorum, and a working AV system, I hereby call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so using ActonTV's YouTube channel, which is found at the top of this page. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on ActonTV's website at actontv.org. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We're starting to get into a routine here of the alternating between sort of our business meetings and our goal-oriented meetings. And this is a goal-oriented meeting this evening. One of my favorite parts of our goal-oriented meetings is that we are starting with a moment of recognition for some of the great things that are happening in our district. And so this evening we have two folks who we are recognizing. Peter, I'll hand it over to you for some of those introductions.
Okay, great. Why don't we go up there?
Yep.
All right, so one of the best parts of my job is I get to interact with some of the amazing students that we have in our district. And, you know, you've heard from them before, and we just have students that do some really amazing things. But this year, Acton is working on its 250th anniversary celebration. And so one of our high school history teachers, Mary Price Maddox, has been the school district representative on the Acton 250th committee. So I first just want to thank Mary Price for all the work that she's done in leading this. But one of the really cool outcroppings of this is one of our high school students, Aaryan Arora, actually had done a major project to help commemorate the Acton 250th. And we're going to have Aaryan tell you a little bit about the project in more depth, but essentially he created a field map of the Acton community where students could learn about all of the different historical sites in the community and actually do almost a scavenger hunt as they went through the community. But then in addition, he worked with our educators, and I want to thank Gabby for her work in coordinating this across the elementary schools, but he went and he presented to our students at each of the elementary schools with the Acton Minutemen. So tremendous job coordinating this, Aaryan. I was incredibly impressed. I'm going to let you tell the committee a little bit more about it, but I just wanted to bring you up and recognize you for all of the work you did and say thank you. Nice job. We have a little certificate for you too. And we'll let your parents get pictures and things like that. Mostly so it can embarrass you a little. Yeah. That's really the point of this, is to rotate through some students.
Here are the
oh, awesome. I will
maps, yes. All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I would like to thank Mr. Peter Light for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm Aryan Arora. I'm a local Eagle Scout candidate from Troop 32. For my Eagle Scout project, I worked with Acton's 250 committee to create a historical scavenger hunt about the American Revolution for AB's 5th graders to engage the next generation in celebrating the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution and the birth of our nation. This past October 7th, the Acton Minutemen and I all visited all 6 elementary schools to introduce the scavenger hunt to the 5th grade. The scavenger hunt itself takes students through 8 historical locations in Acton, Concord, and Lexington from the eyes of an Acton Minuteman serving under the Reverend Isaac Davis. At each site, students read an immersive description that throws them right into the moment, as if they were experiencing the American Revolution from the eyes of an Acton Minuteman. Once they read this immersive description, they then search for outlined key scavengers, which, through the discovery, help them fully understand the significance of each historical site. So far, we've received excellent feedback from our hosts at the Acton Historical Society and the 5th grade teachers, who have told us that the 5th graders are very excited to complete the scavenger hunt. I'm a firm believer that to ensure the lasting success of our democracy, we need to raise our next generation to be both upstanding citizens and patriots who love their nation. From a young age, I've had the opportunity to learn the importance of patriotism and what it means to be an upstanding citizen through the Boy Scouts of America and through my wonderful Scoutmasters like Ms. Campbell and Mr. Campbell. To ensure that the next generation carries forward this respect for our nation, I believe the best asset we have is the history curriculum we teach in school. And that is why the scavenger hunt is so important. It is not just a celebration of our nation's 250th birthday, but a structured experience that connects our fifth graders who are already learning about the American Revolution to the rich local history and the legacies left behind by our very own Acton Minutemen. By teaching students about the events of the American Revolution while encouraging them to experience this history as if they were Acton Minutemen, we leverage the richness of the location that we're so lucky to live in. All around us are reminders of our revolutionary history, but many historical sites are not widely known. I hadn't fully realized how much history surrounds us in Acton, with its numerous significant houses and figures. However, through creating this project, I had so much fun learning about all of the different figures and houses and locations that surround us. And I truly hope to give this exact same experience to our local fifth graders. To conclude the scavenger hunt, all fifth grade students who complete it will receive a 250 committee tricorn hat, which my brother is wearing right now. And they will be invited to march a section of the Isaac Davis Trail to Concord on April 19th, 2025, alongside the Acton Minutemen. They will be congratulated by a historical speaker at the end of this march. I'm thrilled that the scavenger hunt is underway, and I'm so grateful to everyone that helped make it possible, especially my history teacher, Miss Maddox, who referred me to the 250 committee, Miss Abrams and Mr. Light for helping me organize this experience with the schools, and finally, Mr. Clower and Mr. Forbes, two individuals that are on the 250 committee who supported me in documenting the experiences of the Acton Minutemen in an authentic and engaging way. It's my dream that for years to come, this scavenger hunt will continue to open the eyes of the next generation to the beauty and the sacrifice that went into creating this nation. Thank you so much for listening.
Congratulations. Thank you.
All right, so the second person we want to actually call up and recognize tonight is one of our staff members. Kate Crosby is the district's energy manager, and she has been here for longer than I have, I will say. You know, longer than she's been alive, to be honest. I think, though, I don't think anyone can truly appreciate all that Kate does for the school district. Not only just in terms of our sustainability efforts and being good stewards of the environment, but quite honestly, from a financial perspective, she saves the district multiple factors of her actual salary that she makes from us in energy costs. And it's really an incredible job that she's done. So this year, she actually recently attended a ceremony where our Boardwalk campus was named Green Building of the Year in Massachusetts. And at the same time, the same organization actually named Kate as the change agent of the year for the state of Massachusetts. So I think that's an incredible honor. I'm going to actually let her tell you a little bit about all the things that she's been working on and we've been launching and some of the recognition that we've received, even a little bit of a sneak preview of something that we can't release to the public but can tell you publicly. So we're excited to launch that. So Kate, if you come up, I just want to personally thank you for everything that you do for the school district. It's absolutely amazing. You do great work, not only behind the scenes, but also with all of our students. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. I want to remember to say that one of my greatest delights and perhaps most impactful parts of my work is being an advisor for Resource Force for a student team at the high school. And they have over the years accomplished a lot of important achievements. So I really enjoy working with them tremendously. Yes, the U.S. Green Building Council, Massachusetts chapter, had a ceremony recently, their Green Building Showcase, their Green Awards Showcase, and the big awards are saved for the end, and Boardwalk was selected as the Green Building of the Year, so that was really wonderful. Arora Street was there, and it was great. And I was there because I'd been tipped off and asked to come, and because I was recognized as well, which was a great honor. In addition, Eversource has selected Boardwalk to make a customer story video, and there's a really wonderful video now about the building. They did a terrific job with it, and they want to hold it up as an example for other school districts to understand how they can move forward on a geothermal building. On Friday, tomorrow morning early, I'm attending a MSBA event for other school districts to gather. I think there's 60 attendees coming to learn how to build geothermal school buildings, and Boardwalk will be featured there as well. The video will be shared. I want to mention too that the resource force has been working with the policy subcommittee on taking a look at the sustainability policy and considering an annual report on decarbonization as the district looks at that goal. I want to mention that just a few hours ago, the Massachusetts legislature passed a very significant climate bill. It passed the House today, and it's going to Governor Healy for signature. And it includes provisions to curb natural gas and speed up permitting for more green energy. So everything we're doing here is consistent with a very forward-looking state policy. And finally, I'd like to make sure that the school committee is well informed that the district was awarded $200,000 from US EPA for a part of an electric school bus. And we were hopeful that the state would be able to supplement that, and indeed they have handsomely. And we've been awarded the district has been awarded $1.5 million in funding from the state in order to allow the district to acquire and operate 4 electric school buses. So that's a really big deal. Yeah, it's huge. So the operations team is busily trying to figure out how we actually execute on all that. So it's a lot involved. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Kate.
All right, thank you both and congratulations. And I eagerly look forward to riding on an electric school bus. Very excited. All right, student representative updates. Do we have student reps here to update? Wonderful, come on up. We're going to change things up a little bit. Peter, do you want to sort of explain that for us?
Sure. So just to update the committee, I had an opportunity to meet with some of our student reps yesterday at the high school. So Shaina, I don't know if you'd actually like to maybe sit at the table. And you'll just press the red button in the middle to turn it on. So one of the things that I talked to the reps about, and this is a discussion that Leela and I had prior, and I think the reps were thinking at the same time, and you heard about at one of the prior meetings, was thinking about how to expand the role of the student representatives and make sure that it's a meaningful role with strong input into the school committee in terms of decision making. So I met with the student reps yesterday. We talked a little bit about kind of the intent of the state law around student reps, and looking forward to hopefully doing some visioning over the course of this year about how to expand that role. But one of the quick changes we thought we could make was to invite the student reps to sit at the table. So it felt a little bit more engaging rather than more like part of the public comment that the school committee hears at each meeting. So Shaina is the first to kick this off. She came off a hard-fought soccer field last night. I know it didn't end maybe in the way we wanted, but very, very proud of the team. So congratulations there, and I'll turn it over to you for an update, Shaina.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Shaina Hershenow, a senior and newly elected student representative to the school committee. As the first quarter has come to a close, many of us are focused on finalizing our college applications. It's a busy time for students with imminent deadlines, fall sports coming to a close, and the holiday season quickly approaching. As for updates on the student representatives, this week members met with Superintendent Light to better solidify our role to the school committee. Committee member Ms. Ramachandran has agreed to serve as liaison between us and the school committee, especially in the formation of the new student advisory board that is soon to be started within the district. This board will help ensure that a diverse range of student voices are better represented within the school committee. The AB Students for Equity and Justice Club has also been advocating for the issue of access to menstrual products and bathrooms at the high school. There have been logistical issues in the past, however, us representatives have begun planning surrounding an official policy on the issue. Lastly, I appreciate your time and attention. I look forward to continuing my role as a representative for the rest of the year.
Does anybody have any questions for Shaina before she runs away? Nope. Thank you, Shaina. I think that access to menstrual products is a really important item. It's one that we can definitely write a policy around, and I think it's a great opportunity for engagement between our committees, the policy subcommittee, and the student reps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shaina.
Okay, we are on to public participation. So per our school committee policy BEDH, members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. Public participation will only take place during this time in our meeting, and speakers must be recognized by the chair before speaking. The committee does not typically respond to comments during public participation. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to make a public comment? Hi, John.
John Peterson, 6 Jackson Drive. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. According to my calculations, that means we're missing some school committee members. And I would not particularly make a point of this, but as I think back, over the last couple of years, attendance, both in terms of an entire meeting as well as members missing parts of meetings, has been a significant issue. I fully appreciate that, people are busy. There are many conflicting demands on people's lives, but this is not a good look for the school committee. I hope that everybody, I know Adam has had a concern about this. I hope that, people are sensitive to his concern and respond by showing up for these meetings. The second point that I'd like to make is in your packet, on page 3, the discussion begins, an analysis of spring 2024 MCAS data reinforces our growing need to ensure that we're reviewing our student information through a subgroup lens. And I mention that because question 2, which passed, relieving the high school graduation requirement of MCAS, was presented with a lot of information about making MCAS go away. I hope that the school committee and the administration continue to support the importance of standardized tests as part of a comprehensive assessment of student performance and a tool that can be used to improve our educational experience. Again, it's not the answer to all the questions, but MCAS can answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Ooh, that was very forceful. All right, seeing none, we are on to the superintendent's update. Peter.
All right, thanks, Adam. So we obviously got to do a couple of congratulations at the beginning of this meeting, and we are hoping to get what I think is going to become, a very famous group of individuals here to make a repeat appearance, because I want to congratulate the girls swim and dive team, who just recently won the state championship. That is their 3rd state championship in 4 years. They are closing in on the Patriots dynasty, so congratulations to our swim team. I also want to congratulate our high school volleyball star, Chloe Heitman, class of 2025, who officially became the first player in AB history with 1,000 kills. So that is absolutely tremendous. Congratulations. And then finally, I want to congratulate the high school marching band for winning the state championship for the U.S. Bands Group 5A. So lots of great stuff happening around the district and certainly a lot to celebrate with our students. Last month, I have to go back in time here, on October 28th, U.S. Representative Jim McGovern and staff from the Office of U.S. Representative Lori Trahan visited the Acton-Boxborough Regional High School to highlight the district's expanding farm-to-school program. Joined by State Senator Jamie Eldridge, State Representative Simon Cataldo, Deputy Commissioner Winton Pitcoff of the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, and a whole bunch of other people that I'm not going to bore you with, but we will send out. However, we did have Adam Klein and Ginny Kramer in attendance, so that was wonderful that you were able to attend and kind of see all the good work from our cafeteria staff. So participants in the tour toured the school cafeteria. They enjoyed a lunch featuring local vegetables from Massachusetts farms and discussed federal and state investments in school meals and local agriculture that have made the program so successful. So thank you so much to our school lunch program. They do absolutely amazing things, and the food that our students eat is nothing like what I had the opportunity to experience when I was in school, and that's fortunate for everyone. Just as a follow-up to School Resource Officer Memorandum of Understanding, one of the responsibilities outlined in that is that we have a process to introduce the SRO program and provide information to members of the community, including in a language that they can understand. We actually we did a soft launch of an SRO website with key information from the Memorandum of Understanding. We have bios and pictures of the 2 SROs there. We have a description of what SROs might be involved in schools, as well as how to contact them, including in languages other than English, and then also provided just some key information about the trainings that the SROs do. So kind of a light version of the actual MOU, but then we also linked the MOU right on the website as well, and included the link to the school committee's study group of the SRO. Leading to that process. So want to make sure that you are aware that that's up and running now. We will be sending that to families tomorrow in the superintendent update. Also simultaneous to that, I've been working with the police chief in Boxborough around a parallel MOU to Boxborough. That will be in your packet next time as part of your business meeting. We did move that forward just for a second read and vote because it's identical to the Acton MOU, except that in Boxborough, they don't assign their SROs on a full-time basis because they have other duties as police officers in the community. So there's a little difference in how that gets scheduled with building principals, but otherwise it's a parallel MOU. So you will see that next time at your meeting. We also have some recognition of different cultural holidays and celebrations. This is Native American Heritage Month in November. We also just had Veterans Day, and we have Thanksgiving coming up and the break. So we will be including the early release times in the superintendent's update so families have that at a district level as well. I'm going to let Tori update on Elementary Budget Task Force a little later in the meeting, but we are also working on the Vision of a Graduate, which is tied to the 3rd district goal of some selected visioning. And we engaged all of our professional staff on the Professional Development Day, which was also Election Day, in helping us to begin to define kind of the knowledge, skills, habits of mind that we want our graduates to possess. We will be sending that out to the community in the next 48 hours. It should be going out. We are sending it out to our high school students as well to contribute to that process. And then we're also sending it out to the business community in this region, in the Middlesex area, to try and get some business perspective on what that looks like. We are also going to host a extended workshop for community members who would like to go deeper and help us in a more meaningful way beyond a survey coming up in January, and we'll be sending out some information to individuals for how they can apply to that as well. But we're looking forward to bringing together a diverse set of ideas and opinions and community members to help us do some visioning around what types of outcomes we want for our students. It's actually perfect timing, I think, in the wake of the MCAS vote, to be thinking even more broadly about what we want our students to be doing while they're in high school and the types of outcomes we have.
Thanks, Peter. Any questions for Peter? Nope. Okay, we are on to our presentations for this evening. First presentation is on the MCAS and MTSS update. Hi, Gabby. Hi.
I need to push the red button. Great, thanks.
I told Gabby there was no pressure here on her first big presentation.
No, it's all great. It's good to see you all. It's an honor to provide you with an early update on Goal 2 of our district improvement plan. It's important to mention that while I'm sitting here before you tonight, the efforts underway in service to increasing academic access and opportunities for all students could not happen without the hard work of colleagues across the district who serve in administrative, teacher, leader, classroom, and support roles. So I'm representing the information for you, but really representing just the voices of so many hard workers. You'll note that I'll only highlight academic information tonight. The focus of Goal 2 specifically is on targeting academics, areas to address the goals around our academic performance. In subsequent presentations, you'll hear more about the comprehensive work that's happening in other areas. And as well, there are an infinite number of ways to present academic data to you. So we've chosen just one. And so you may have questions that surface around some data or might want to request additional information. I just ask that you please feel free to send me information if it's helpful, requests for that information if it's not present here. So tonight's goal is to provide a status update on district improvement goal number 2, which as read is intended to increase the number of students on a pathway to proficiency in literacy and mathematics through the implementation of a multi-tiered system of supports in order to expand access and opportunity for all students. There were 3 critical pathways that were developed this summer associated with this goal that include progress monitoring and adjusting our practices around MTSS, transitioning and further developing our MTSS work beyond the K-6 schools into the junior high, and then to implement progress monitor and adjust changes to the high school course levels based on the school committee's plan and commitment to that work. So tonight I'm going to walk you through some of this information with a look at 2024 MCAS results with a specific focus on those 2 benchmark grades and content areas that we highlighted in our district improvement plan, which are grade 3 literacy and grade 8 mathematics. I'm also going to highlight some areas of advanced placement participation and results and some other assessment measures that we utilize K through 8. We'll highlight some of the findings in a brief analysis and as well some actions that are planned and or underway in response to the data and some implications for this work. So before we jump in, we're going to be taking a look at assessment data this evening, and it's helpful to ground ourselves in the purpose of assessment. I appreciated Mr. Peterson's commentary earlier because the way we think about assessment is in a very comprehensive manner. This Hattie quote summarizes an empowering quote for educators and really does help us to anchor ourselves in why of assessment, and that's really to empower us with information to change and adapt, because our profession is all about change and adaptation. This data pyramid that I'm showing you really does represent, I think, the essence of what Mr. Peterson was mentioning earlier, which is that when we think about assessment, we think about it as a comprehensive system. A system with varying levels of frequency and importance delineated in tiers of a pyramid, T-I-E-R-S, not T-E-A-R-S. At the top of the pyramid, you'll notice that we've placed a star around the top 2 layers because tonight's data look will focus on these top 2 layers. These academic assessments that take place 2 to 4 times a year or annually. As I mentioned, MCAS and AP are pretty much the only summative assessments that we really have, once a year assessments, and then we look at other assessments that are more benchmark assessments. We're going to talk about that a little bit this evening as well. And in concert with the data pyramid, it's also important to highlight that our work is anchored in a philosophical mindset and practice of using student outcomes to inform our decisions. The multi-tiered system of support represented here shows the incredible importance of a strong tier 1 that should foster success and learning for 80 to 85% of students. An additional layer of support, we call that tier 1 or core plus more, tier 2 or core plus more, for 15 to 20% of our students, and then more intensified smaller group instruction for fewer students for about 1 to 5%. This is a healthy MTSS triangle. When we examine data and determine that we've not reached 80% of success for students, that big green area, the work is to strengthen tier 1. And so that's really important to anchor ourselves, those pyramids this evening before we jump right into our spring MCAS data. The first data set we're going to, actually let me just talk a little bit about some background. This is just a reminder slide for all of you, background information about MCAS and what it does, what it measures, and how we look at both achievement and growth through this assessment system. Both are important parts of our comprehensive assessment system. The middle box talks about the performance levels and scaled scores that are reported for kiddos, and over to the right you'll see how student growth is reported and the percentage based on their performance one year to the next compared to their academic peers across the Commonwealth. So these are just some general background information that I thought would be useful for us as a reminder. So the first data set that we are going to look at is a very high-level balcony view. This is our English language arts performance across all MCAS assessments in 2024. An important question that we have asked across the Commonwealth is what progress has been made to return to pre-pandemic levels of performance, both at the Commonwealth and in individual districts. You'll see here English language arts data from 2019 through 2024 with a gap in 2020 for obvious reasons. You'll note that holistically highlighted here as the percentage of students who are meeting and exceeded expectations, we have not yet returned to pre-pandemic outcomes. Interesting, you'll note that while significantly above the performance of state, the line graph is quite similar between Acton-Boxborough students and students across the state. In mathematics, we have a different story. We've nearly returned to our pre-pandemic performance levels. Again, note the similar trend with state performance, and again, note that this is all of our students' grades 3 through 8 and 10 over time. When we take a bit of a zoomed, this is science, apologies. This is our science performance, and we have not only returned to pre-pandemic levels of performance, but we've actually eclipsed and seen some really nice performance increases over time. When we take a zoomed in look at grade 3 students in just English language arts, which again was one of those areas that we're looking to benchmark as an area of importance, we see some trends, we see the same trends that we saw at the district level. Drilling down to see how our subgroups have performed over time, you'll note that first chart on the left highlights our grade 3 students in the aggregate all together, and then we've tried to break out our subgroups: English learners, students with disabilities, and low income. You'll note these subgroups performing well below the aggregate compared to their peers, and their trends are not in line with their non-English learners, non-students, students not with disabilities, and students not indicated as being having low income status. The next slide breaks down our racial and native language group performance and gives us insight into groups performing below, at, or above the aggregate. The numerical breakdown for 2024 outcomes can be found in the tables at the top, and the line graphs below the chart show performance outcomes over time. You'll note in our native language chart, we have blocked out the numbers for the students in those 4 native language areas because they were below 10, and we wanted to keep the information non-identifiable, but we've left the other ones available for you to see. The charts, the line graphs on the bottom correspond to the racial breakdown, and language breakdown correspond to the colors, so you'll be able to see performance of those groups again over time. When we look at grade 8, our second benchmarking grade and content area, typically a significant year of math learning with many notable pre and algebra topics explored. Our aggregate have returned to pre-pandemic performance and outperformed the state. And when we look across the subgroups, we see that this is not true for these groups of learners. A similar look at racial and native groups breakdown of grade 8 is represented here. Similarly, we have compiled the tables of 2024 performance on the top, and the line graphs represent their performance over time. There are some discrepant performance levels for our Latino Hispanic subgroup. And it's important to note, it's also important to note, next to that performance subgroup, the high growth that performance, that subgroup yielded, which does illustrate incredible learning over that 1 year's time. So even though that subgroup is performing lower in terms of the percent of meeting and exceeding expectations, a 71.4% average SGP, student growth percentile, is actually something incredible to celebrate, especially because many of those kiddos represent students who are fairly new to our country. So seeing the impact of a short time of education within Acton-Boxborough is really remarkable. I've highlighted here just a handful of statements connected with high-level findings. Deeper work has been conducted at our schools as part of our data dives and intervention planning, and this will continue throughout the year as we have the opportunity to look at other measures. I've mentioned several of these already in my narrative throughout, and just want to punctuate the fact that the reality of our subgroup gaps persisting, and in many cases, the gaps increasing, especially for our students with disabilities and our Hispanic and Latino population, is something that is being taken incredibly seriously at the school level and really looking at for effective interventions and work with our multilingual population and students with exceptional needs. We do continue to outperform the state at all grade levels and all content areas. You're well aware of the strength of of the aggregate system here, and we know that with our growing needs and our growing assets because of our multilingual learners, the growth of our practice is going to continue to be enhanced. We would be remiss if we did not mention, as part of our MCAS portion of this slide presentation, the update on the impact of ballot question 2. As you all are well aware, the grade 10 MCAS was eliminated as a graduation requirement as part of the November 5th election. There is very little information on this right now, as you're all probably aware. The information that we have is really in these bullets. It will take effect on December 5th, 2024. So DESE is encouraging school districts who have kiddos who have yet to reach competency determination on MCAS to continue to retest in November with the November retests, because it's still regulatory compliance at this stage. When the new law does take effect, the competency determination for graduation will be based on, quote, satisfactorily completing coursework that has been certified by the student's district. The question that everyone is wondering is, what does certification look like? Who determines certification? What are those guidelines going to look like? So that is what we're waiting for. And additionally, if you have asked about the impact of this decision on the Seal of Biliteracy, as well as state university scholarships, you might be aware, you're likely aware, that the Seal of Biliteracy currently requires receiving a qualifying score on ELA MCAS in 10th grade, as does eligibility for state Abigail and John Adams scholarships. So we're still waiting to hear information about that at this time. So that's not yet available, but I just wanted to make sure to acknowledge that those questions are out there and to share that we are waiting with you all for the answers to those questions. We're going to pivot a little bit to the next tier down on that assessment system pyramid that we talk about, and we look at assessments multi-times per year. And this will focus on kindergarten through grade 8, additional data sets that we rely on to help inform our instructional practices as part of a comprehensive assessment system. So you're aware that a few years ago, legislation came out that required all districts to facilitate an early literacy screener to identify students who may be at risk for reading difficulties. In 2021, Acton-Boxborough began facilitating the DIBELS assessment, which is a really incredibly rich assessment task and gives us great information on students. Dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills is what that stands for. And you'll see we've charted out beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year percentage of students who are at risk across time and across grade levels, which is really important for us to continue to monitor. This slide shows how we're monitoring those students. You'll note two areas of importance. One, we've only assessed students at the beginning of the year for 24-25, so you'll see that's why there's middle of the year and end of the year columns are blank. And most at-risk students over the past couple of years have made great progress in their reading as the percentage of students in this at-risk category has declined. These numbers are still above the 1 to 5% that we would expect to see in a successful MTSS model, so there continues to be work to do. And that is just something, data is information, data is something that helps us to understand what's next. The iReady reading data below shows a comparison of fall performance between 2021, the first year of this assessment, and this fall, 2024, for all grades 2 to 8 students. There's not a significant difference noted in this comparison, and this is just beginning of the year data. Similarly, on this next slide, we've highlighted a mathematics screener that we facilitate for our K and 1 students, intended to serve a similar purpose to DIBELS, identifying the most at-risk math learners. And iReady Mathematics, which is facilitated 3 times per year and monitored as a curriculum-based measure, is below that. This is pretty remarkable to me. I'm trying to present a lot of information to you objectively, but there's something about this that's hard not to mention with our math data. In fall 2021, at the start of the year, 50% of students were in those 2 areas of green. And at the start of the year this year, 75% of students were in the green, which I think is really exceptional and can only be attributed to a pretty major change that this district went through a few years ago with the adoption of a high-quality mathematics curricular resource in illustrative math, and there's been such targeted work to support mathematics learning using this core resource. I just think it's really important to highlight. Like I said, I've been trying to be very objective with the data, but it's really hard not to notice that incredible growth in student performance K to 8 at the start of the year with the same tool. So I hope that's okay to mention. Looking to the high school and to really another measure of something that we're importantly tracking. The next few slides will provide insights into both the participation and performance rates in advanced placement courses. Acton-Boxborough Regional High School has made a concerted effort to open more enrollment into higher level courses for more students. And this information provides insight into that hard work. And again, this is really hard to be objective, but if you look all the way to the right, the number of students who have taken exams and the number of students who have scored a 3, a 4, and a 5 in 2024, it just tells a story of commitment to high level, high quality coursework, and really is a tribute to a lot of hard work. This slide highlights the AP participation by race and ethnicity. This is the number of students taking one or more exam broken down by racial category, and you'll notice that every number on the far right is an increase, some significantly over 2023. Again, a result of such concerted effort. And this shows performance by race or ethnicity, the number of students scoring 3, 4, or 5, which mirrors similar trends of improvement. So there's lots of hard work that kind of falls behind the scenes, or like what's happening behind the curtain, to help explain some of the improvements and some of the work that's underway with aspirations for improvement. We've tried to break this down into some broad themes for all students, K to 6, for all students 7 through 12, and then to also really punctuate that there are specific efforts both currently underway and really being considered for future efforts for our students with disabilities and multilingual learners. I just want to highlight a few of them just to make sure that they are mentioned, but they're all very, very important. But I would say that the efforts at the K-6 level, both with the development and strengthening of a multi-tiered system of support has been really monumental. Coming into this work as someone new to your community and as a learner in this field alongside you, it's really monumental what you all have accomplished, and it's been really rewarding to be able to I often have said to the team, like, let's slow down to go fast. So that work right now has meant we're going to really take that a step back in the MTSS work to that green part of the triangle to really focus our efforts on core instruction and our core curriculum efforts, because there's so much new, even though illustrative math has been around for a long time, or for, since pre-pandemic, it's still fairly new, and EL education as a core literacy resource is brand new. And so we really need to give our time and space to our educators to learn this knowledge building curriculum resource and take the time. And it's been an incredibly needed pause in going further and really deepening our understanding of that work. As well, Peter mentions the development of the AB vision of a graduate work is impacting all of our learners eventually, K through 12, and that's pretty exciting because that's going to impact just the way we think about instruction and embedding those competencies that are finally determined as part of our instructional plans. And I also want to highlight the work of the Chronic Absenteeism Task Force, because if our kiddos aren't coming to school and if they're not sitting in our seats, then they're definitely not going to be achieving and thriving as we would hope that they would. For our students in grades 7 through 12, one of the strategies was to help to expand the MTSS work from K-6 up to the junior high. And even though we haven't necessarily said we're doing MTSS at the junior high, which is quite fine, the efforts that are underway at the junior high is a monumental effort to add mathematics and reading workshop models to a directed study period that exists within the junior high. And the team there is working really hard to intervene with beginning of the year data and with this new structure. And still early in the game, but I'm really proud of that team for trying something new to improve the outcomes of students. Additionally, the high school is following their visit with NEASC last year and some collaborative conversations, has partnered to work to develop curriculum maps and to also continue to enhance their own professional practice working with more diverse populations because of the leveling work that you all supported. And for students with disabilities and multilingual learners, as you know, this is the year of the new IEP. And even though that feels like it could be just a technical change, we in education try to look at every seemingly technical change and really think about how can this enhance the work that we're doing with students. This new IEP is really an asset-based model, and it does allow for more user accessibility, and so leveraging that is really important and not letting this moment go by, but it's a significant change in practice in the way that we're documenting student accommodations and modifications using this pathway. We've also adopted, we've had a tool called Elevations for quite some time, which is a tool that helps us monitor and track our students, our multilingual programming, but we've added a module called Strategies to Elevations, which is going to allow us to provide our educators with just-in-time professional learning modules. So it's basically a professional learning module built into this learning platform, which we're excited about enhancing because those needs are real for our educators. So what are some implications for future considerations? With our rising multilingual population and with our noted disparities in outcomes, and it's been really important for us to wrap our head around how do we plan for the long term. If our growth continues to be similar in the next 5 years as it's been, we started the year, even this year, just below 500 multilingual learners, and I think at this point, 400 multilingual learners, I think we're at about 430 today. And so we have we've elicited the support and thought partnership of a partner in the field of multilingual learner education who is currently conducting an evaluation to help us inform staffing and scheduling and also a professional learning pathway. We are potentially looking to conduct a further study of special education programs to better understand the needs of students in the here and now. We have growing needs of students with different special education identifications and needs, and so we need to wrap our head around that. And continuing to think about the early successes of MTSS in partnership with the model that we have K-6 is this data protocol and data tool that we're now using at K-6. So really considering scaling use of both of those beyond our K-6 schools. And I'll leave you with a little Nelson Mandela quote, because why not? And offer the opportunity for any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Gabby. Sure. All right, around the table, questions or comments on the presentation? Tori?
I really enjoyed looking at numbers, especially, I had actually already looked at the advanced placement ones, and something that jumped out at me there was that we're clearly successful on the course leveling end of things, of starting to get more kids accessing those AP courses, and I think that was, you know, one of the things we were looking for, but also seeing that they're being successful is really neat. And I didn't get a chance to look really hard at this earlier, but are you, I saw the breakdown by subgroups, but do we feel like that is really kind of distributed across our population, or is that, you know, just certain groups that are taking advantage of this?
I think it's an improvement. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think we always want to continuously improve, so I think the numbers show some improvement and growth. Some of the populations are quite small, and so seeing one or two more students is a step in the right direction. But I think that there's continued improvement. The numbers are growing, and we just need to keep monitoring them. I think what gets measured gets done, and so when we continue to look at those numbers and get into the habit of monitoring the data, then we pay more close attention to it. Yeah, thank you.
Leela?
I had the same reaction as Tori about the AP data related to MTSS. My question, I kind of had two. Particularly around MCAS, but generally, do we have the ability to look at data intersectionally? I know that, like, you might not be able to present it to us because the numbers might be really small, but just for your own assessment internally. I'll stop there for a second.
So, can you clarify what you mean about intersectionally?
Yeah, so like when we look at students who are Hispanic or Latino, we are assuming, because we know who's in our schools, that there's also probably a secondary identity of, like, maybe not being fluent in English at this moment. But are we able to dig into that data to be able to see whether that is the case?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, so we can drill down into individual student data. Yes, I absolutely can't present that to you in that way. It would be bringing together a lot of different overlaps, but we absolutely can. We know those students, we know all of their identities, and we can cross-reference those with each other, you know, to see where there are areas of success and where there are areas of need. One of the things that I've done historically is often looked at high needs students as a group. It's a little bit of an easier look because it actually takes all students who fit into students with disabilities, students of low income status, and students who are currently or former English learners, and it groups them in an unduplicated fashion. So that's another way that you can streamline a little bit of a look, but we absolutely can look at individual student data through their intersectionality and drill down further.
That's great. I appreciate that. And then this is more of just like a for future.
Yes.
When we are able to look at the AP student breakdown by like race or ethnicity, for example, would it be possible to give like rather than like 8 Black students are in APs, like what percentage of all of our Black students is that? I think to this point about small numbers, like the total number might have gone down, but the numbers taking the APs have stayed the same, and so that's actually a greater percent of the student group. So that would just be helpful, but thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks, Lila.
Yeah, just really excellent and thorough presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vikram.
I see Amanda. We're going to go around the table first. It's still my turn. Gabby, thank you very much.
Sure.
You know, I guess the image that kept coming to my mind was that sort of an iceberg, and I think you talked about that a little bit. And to me, the tip of the iceberg is our high-performing students. It is the results that put us at the top of the state all the time. And for me, what I'm more concerned about is it's sort of like an upside-down iceberg, right? Because the big numbers are at the top, but the stuff that's under the water are those kids who are not serving well. And so, you know, I know we've been focusing on that. I want to definitely continue to focus on that. Holistically, the one thing that sort of stuck out to me, and I'd love to know a little bit more, is sort of where our literacy results are at, particularly because we've seen great results on the math side, and you spoke to a little bit about the new math curriculum. And I know we've recently, over the past few years, brought on a new English language curriculum as well. But the numbers from 21 to 24 are sort of going in the wrong direction, and I'd love to know a little bit more about that. Is that because we've not really fully implemented the literacy curriculum? Is there something, what's missing there that the numbers aren't telling us?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I mean, I would say last year was the first soft launch year of EL education curriculum. So when I think about the literacy curriculum, it really has three big components. So we have a phonics, phonemic awareness, foundational skills curriculum that's called Foundations. It's a resource. We use a phonemic awareness resource called Hegarty, and then we have this knowledge building curriculum that's really intended to like bring it all together thematically through science and social studies themes, super engaging, really great. That third piece, which is the core of the I guess the core of the three, last year was a soft launch. And so this is really the first year, which is why I made mention about, you know, MTSS being such an incredible framework, and the core of MTSS is the core curriculum. And so when we think about MTSS and we talk about MTSS, we really need to make sure the time that kiddos are in classrooms, all students are in classrooms, is in the most important time in the day, and that we try to reach success with 80 to 85% of those learners, because the interventions, the core plus more, the flex blocks that are existing, and the time that they have outside of classrooms to get more instruction is layered on top of that. But if you have 30%, 40% of students who need that, that tells me that the core needs strengthening. And so our pullback this year with the leadership team and with our coaches and with our specialists has been really to pull back and say, let's really give all that we can to our educators around supporting this implementation of EL education in harmony with Foundations and Hegarty, and really see what we can do with that. And that's really hard work. So it is early. I'd say it's super early. There is a lot of research that talks about implementation dips. So I don't know if this is, you know, with new curriculum, not that I'm hoping that that's going to happen, but I would say this is really the first full launch, this first full year with that curriculum. That was a long answer for a pretty simple question. I apologize.
Please.
You know, one of the things, just to add a little information to that, I remember looking at our iReady data a couple of years ago, and I was actually struck that we had real strengths in phonemic awareness and phonics instruction, and what was lagging were some of the other literacy skills, is where we really started to see greater gaps in what students were doing, which is really what led us to look more deeply at that core literacy program, because Hegarty and Foundations are going to really address that phonics and phonemic awareness, and those had been implemented across the district. So we think that contributed to some of the strengths we were seeing in our own internal data, but yet where we saw lagging skills in some of the other areas, that led us to look at that core literacy program. So I think, you know, realistically, as Gabby said, you know, last year in the soft launch, educators were really just getting their hands on this curriculum for the first time. They tried on maybe 1 or 2 modules at the most, just to start to learn how the process works. And then this year, we're actually going through the entire curriculum. But I think, realistically, every day an educator interacts with new curriculum is actually their first time seeing that new aspect of the curriculum. So it actually can take 2 and even 3 years for educators to really feel like they start to own more of what they can do on a daily basis because they've gone through some of those routines with frequency. So I think, we're probably, based on the math data that we saw, we're probably, should expect to see really strong results year 3 and 4 is really where I would expect it to start to turn. But we're hoping, obviously, that we can get to that sooner.
Yeah, so I see now 2 observations out of this. First is the math curriculum's leading the way, and we should see that those same improvements should come as we continue to deliver the new EL curriculum. The other part that I would highlight is that none of this would have been possible had we not standardized curriculums across all of our elementary schools. So I think there's something really important there to just sort of remind everybody 5, 6 years ago, every elementary school had a different curriculum, and it would probably, I could not imagine how Deb was trying to sort of take apart and understand the results and what actions to take. So I think it speaks really well to what we've done in standardizing some of the ways that things are delivered at the elementary level. I will take just one more second before we go to Amanda to just, since you opened the door to MCAS, I have one sort of observation on this, speaking a little bit to what John mentioned at the beginning as well. It was really interesting to look statewide at the results of the vote on MCAS and to see sort of the bubble that we're in with our comparable communities of affluent, high-performing districts who voted to keep the MCAS in place. Diving in just a little bit deeper to the 2 towns, it was really split between our towns. So, I think that we're left with the results, and we have to figure out what we're going to do for a graduation requirement. But I think that it was another lens, I think, on how we look at our education in our community compared to even just the rest of our Commonwealth. So nothing there to respond to, just an observation. So we have Amanda Bailey here as a representative from the CPAC who provides an advisory role to the school committee. So I'm going to invite Amanda to make some questions or comments here. You might have to turn that microphone back on.
Hello. Yep. Thank you, Adam. Again, my name is Amanda Bailey, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Thank you, Gabby, for all of that. These are things that I've said before, so this is not at you. Parent engagement, family engagement improves student outcomes. I'm going to say it again. Family engagement improves student outcomes. The efforts to address learning gaps and amplify success slide did not mention family engagement. It's buried in some of those elements, but it's not a central focus. And it takes a lot to get educators up to speed on new curriculum. We're learning how to use the data, no data without a story. All of those aspects have to take place. Please, please, please center family engagement in this. That includes gen ed progress reporting as well. Where are parents involved in the MTSS process besides a letter that says it's happening? How are we engaged meaningfully in that? And that speaks to child find, identifying students with disabilities, but also all students, right, are involved in MTSS. All students are gen ed students first. So just, I would implore you to engage in that. I know that it's on your mind and you're considering it. And I would also say just to the members of the committee, you have policies, IK and IKAB, around student progress reporting and student progress reporting to families. They haven't been addressed in 10 years. And in order to update that, student progress reporting actually involves a committee, the superintendent, and a considerable amount of effort. But I really encourage you to take a look at those and ask ourselves, are we following those right now across all of our elementary schools and with fidelity? So thank you, Adam, for indulging me, and thank you, Gabby.
Thanks, Amanda. Any other last questions or comments for Gabby? No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, up next is a review of the updated protocols for hate and bias incidents. Jen Faber is here to present that. Hi, Jen. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening. My goal is to not use my readers, but it might happen, people. It's happening already. All right.
It happens to all of us.
I'm acknowledging it now to everyone. It happened. All right. I'm actually here not to talk about my readers. I'm here to talk about the protocols of responding to incidents involving hate and bias, which I want to point started before I got here. So there was a huge team and a lot of collaborative work that happened before here. I got here in 2022 when it was initially published. And then this past year, we did the revision of it. So I want to acknowledge all the work that was done with a lot of different affinity groups and a lot of individuals that did this work. And the revision, also, I want to acknowledge the Leadership Coalition that did the work this year. So, oh, I have the clicker. Here we go. This quote actually comes from our protocols that we'll talk more in the next couple slides, but I really want to make sure that we focus on our why, and our why is the trust and the safety and the inclusion. So our goal is to maintain trust within the school community and promote a safe, inclusive learning environment for all. So through this presentation, I'm going to be talking about a complex document that is the protocols, and I'm going to quickly provide an overview just because of time. And we're going to go through the different components of our protocols. And what you see in front of you is a lot of the revision I'll talk about in the next couple slides was the work that we did with the Leadership Coalition that, as I mentioned earlier. But parts of the protocol that I'll review today include the action steps taken for safety and support, the various communication paths, investigation, and also engaging with the students, families, staff, and community leaders. So the following slides are really going to highlight our structure and our approach to handling these incidents and how we're supporting our students in our community. So when we talk about, the first thing we always talk about around this is the safety. So these are the guidelines that we have in order to ensure the safety of the individuals that are involved in these incidents. They're in place in order to protect our students and really to maintain a safe learning environments. Our first step, we separate the offenders from the target. Our next step is implementing the interim measures while investigating the incident. So when these incidents come our way and are reported to us, the first thing we do is where are the students, what can we do to ensure their safety, we make sure that they're separated, and then we start to talk about what are some of the measures that we could put in place, whether it's do they need counseling immediately, do we need to increase our supervision. Those are the things that we start to look for in our environments in the school. Now, if needed, because it's a threat to an individual or our school community, we're going to report it to the police, and then they provide assistance as needed. The communication plan includes 3 different paths, as you can see. We have internal, family and caregiver, as well as public communication. Internally, when an incident is reported to us, it's pretty much reported to Peter or myself. And then administrators are also involved in this communication with us. And then we start, excuse me, we start to identify who else needs to be notified. Our next one is the family and caregiver communication. Now we start to notify the family of the target, and our preferred method is really calling the family. If we can't reach the family, we send them an email. We want to really make sure that we're engaging with the family so they understand what our next steps are, what the supports are, what are the details, our timeline, and answer any questions that they might have. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. Then we also have our public communication. We're going to talk a lot in the next couple slides. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to talk in the next couple slides around the different paths of communication. We have several of them. The Leadership Coalition really spent a lot of time. We had a really lengthy, rich conversations around this. We didn't have one formula. We couldn't come to consensus. So in the next couple slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we did land around communication. The first one is the public communication. So we want to really remain focused on our students, our community, and our learning. So we have 3 different paths here. We're going to have the transparency, the impact, and how we're providing support. We're going to communicate about our events in our schools and share relevant and appropriate facts as needed. We're going to help all understand the impact of these events on our students. And then we're going to share how do we support our students. So once again, it's about the transparency, it's about the impact and the support. This is where we spent a lot of time as a leadership coalition. We talked about this at length. We could not figure out one path to take. So I reached out to a lot of different districts to talk about what are the communication protocols that you have in your districts that have already been there. And we found that many are communicating about incidents, really focusing on the zones of impact. So therefore, the communication is going to vary depending on the incident. So you can see in the first column, we have incidents that occur between individuals. So we're going to communicate to those individuals' families, and appropriate staff members. And that could be trusted adults that those students work with. It could be their counselors. It can be if they're part of a club, a sport. Who are those people that are involved that really need to know? When you look at the middle column, I don't know what's going on here, people. Hold on one second. When you look at the middle column, you're going to be talking about what is the impact on groups of students or classrooms. And that's when we communicate to all the students involved, those families. Sometimes the whole entire classroom will get notified of the incident. And then the third column is really the broad communication that needs to happen. So this is something that it's very public. It could be on social media, it could be on a wall. It is a larger scale, it's targeting larger scale communities. And that's when we're going to start talking about how do we communicate this out to members of the school, the district, and community at large. This next slide, also the dashboard came from conversations with the Leadership Coalition. We were trying to figure out what's another path that we can be transparent with some of the data that we are collecting. I actually collect all the information from the district. So any incidents that happen, I have a spreadsheet and I know what's happening at the different schools, and we look for patterns within those incidents that are reported. So I have this information, but now we're going to have this dashboard. The dashboard will be launched on our website in January. What it's going to report, we're going to do reports in both January and June, and we're going to list the total number of incidents. You can see the incidents by type on the left-hand side, and then you can see those that have been reported in the middle column, and then the findings in the right-hand side column. We are not going to report incidents of a sample size of 6 or less. It's something that we came to consensus for. And if you also want to note the incidents by type in the first square, you'll see hate and bias. We've actually also divided it into the different categories. So we have race, color, religion, and so forth, disability. That was a conversation that actually came, it was feedback that came from the Leadership Coalition, because they really felt like hate and bias is such a large and broad term that it would be really helpful for those who are using this dashboard to understand what's happening in our community, and so that we would note it according to those categories. So that's something that actually came from some feedback from the Leadership Coalition. The website's also going to include definitions of all of these incidents so that the users can understand that. It's ready to go. Unless we get any other feedback, but it'll be ready to go. I've been working with the tech department in order to get this launched for a January use on our website. Yes.
You know, I think a logical question to that, that we talked about with the Leadership Coalition, there were some questions around why not report for each school. And then there were also questions about, you know, even delving deeper into more granular kind of identifying characteristics of groups. So for example, would we ever think of, you know, identifying, you know, anti-Semitism versus Islamophobic comments, things like that? When we start to look at the data, the challenge is the numbers become so small that you couldn't report them because they would likely be identifiable by students. And so we tried to pick a level that could be reportable and, you know, with reasonable transparency, but was useful in that, A, we could provide data, and 2, it didn't identify anyone individually. So the challenge is the more granular you get, the more identifiable it becomes, and then you can't publish data. So it is really walking that tightrope, you know, So I'll let you pick it up from there, but I just wanted to highlight that.
No, I appreciate that, and it's actually how we came to land on it being biannually, because originally we were going to be doing it quarterly. And then as I started to look at data and we started getting feedback and suggestions, we realized, you know what, our sample size is going to be too small to do it quarterly possibly. So if we did it biannually, we'll actually then be able to report the data out. So we've talked a lot about the incidents and communication and all in the safety of our students and community, but we actually have to investigate the incident. So this piece is really about gathering the evidence, interviews of witnesses. Sometimes what happens in an investigation is a witness then says, well, so-and-so also, so we have to investigate. So it does take some time for us to also gather physical evidence, as well as all the interviews that have to happen. And then we start to report the findings to all those involved. The other piece of this that's really important, and I've mentioned it before and I'll mention it again, is providing support. This is the time also when we're really tailoring our support plans. In the beginning, before we started the investigation, we've talked about what are those measures that we put in place while we're investigating. Well, now we have more information and that actually tailors our plans. And now we know, okay, we need to add this. We need to benchmark that. When are we checking in? What else do we need to do? Some of those plans can include, once again, separation. It could be check-ins with adults. It could be support through counseling. There's different ways that we situationally look at each of them and then provide those plans. And then at the conclusion of an investigation, we really make a plan of what are our next steps. We talk about updating the stakeholders, making sure they understand everything that has happened, as well as any of the findings and actions that we've taken. We're going to work with student groups, affinity groups. This is the healing and repair stage. We need to really work with them in order to also unite our community again, because there's reparation that needs to happen within the community. We work with our community partners to collaborate on available resources for any future planning needs. You know, we've built strong relationships with individuals in the town and the clergy and in different ways through the Leadership Coalition, which is wonderful. And we continue to build those relationships in order to be able to have resources in our community. And any questions you might have?
Thank you, Jen. Andrew.
Thanks. Thank you so much for everything you've done. I want to ask one thing regarding the communication. One of the things you spoke about was mostly reacting to hate or bias, but some of those incidents occur because there's an environment that allows those incidents to happen. Mm-hmm. What's the point of view regarding how to establish that these kinds of incidents are not socially acceptable, mm-hmm. and to prevent the environment from occurring where they could proliferate?
Yeah, it's funny because Peter and I were just talking about a lot of the work that's been done beforehand. So one of the things that recently we did, and it came through the Leadership Coalition, is we created a training for all educators around interrupting hate and bias messages in our schools. And this year we're actually going to be doing that for the students. So we're going to have student training about what do you do. So that's about the interrupting when it does happen. Before that, is what you're talking about. But I wanted to note that because I think it's important to know that we're doing both the work with our teachers as well as our students. There's a lot of different things that are happening at different levels in the different schools. I would say for educators, we do some of that work through SEED and our culturally responsive teacher leaders, which I've spoken to you about. With students, we talk a lot about how do we build a culture. We talk about their identities. Part of that is that piece of belonging and understanding that they belong in this community, and we share with them what those identities are, right? So us acknowledging all the different identities that you bring and the different cultures that you bring to our school is part of the work that we're doing to build that safety. Yeah.
I would also say, you know, from a specific programming lens, you know, a lot of the work that you would see happening in elementary schools is kind of the foundation of this work. And so you'll see students actually talking about aspects of their identities that they find valuable to themselves. So that becomes normalized in the cultures of schools. So some students will identify as soccer players. They might identify as dancers. But they'll also identify as other parts of their element, including religion, you know, ethnicity, background, language spoken, things like that. And we want to normalize the discussion around similarities and differences between students, because students might identify that maybe they have a different religion in their identity, but they have a similarity that they both play soccer or they both dance. And so it's building connections between students, I think, at, you know, the young age. And as we progress through the system, you know, we also develop programming through the World of Difference program, which was sponsored by ADL originally. ADL discontinued the program, but we've continued it in kind of a homegrown fashion at both the junior high and high school, where students are actually going into classes and proactively teaching about what they do. I happened to just meet with members of the Jewish Student Union this morning and asked them what's working, what would you say for areas of growth, but one of the things they identified as what really works is they've done celebrations of their own culture around the school. And so one thing they did is around the high holidays, they had made latkes, and when they made them, they then served them to other students, and it was like a real source of pride. They also around, I believe it was Rosh Hashanah, had done some signage around the school and stood out in front of the school, held signs, just to really bring other students into the conversation around culture. And that's, you know, I'm talking just because I happened to have that conversation this morning, but that happens with our Eurasian Youth Group, it happens with our Muslim Student Union, happens with our Black Student Union. And so this idea of building positive identities, keeping positive elements of what students want to share prevalent in our schools, I think is important. But as we worked with the Leadership Coalition, it was now actually 2 years ago that we did this work in defining the problem. The prevalent problem that students had identified was that when there was an incident and something happened that they recognized as a bias incident or an incident of hate, and people around them were silent to it, it actually perpetuated the culture. And they identified that as the root cause. And so when we worked with the Leadership Coalition, once we identified the root cause as silence or, you know, lack of action, the first thing we did was training for educators to equip classroom teachers and other educators in our schools to really have the confidence and skills to be able to interrupt an incident when they see it happen in a classroom in a positive, proactive, restorative way. And then the second step to that, which we launched this year at the junior high, was to do a student training based on the same model for our students. So Jim Marcotte led that training at the junior high. All of the students had an opportunity to learn from Jim his expectations of how to interrupt different incidents. And then we're taking the training that was done at the junior high and expanding that both for high school students later this spring and for our elementary students later this spring. So trying to take a comprehensive approach, everything from kind of celebrating students' identities and making that a part of the culture of the school, all the way through really kind of a direct skill instruction in how to interrupt things positively when someone sees it happen. I think that culture of creating upstanders is a really important step to interrupting patterns. And my working theory and kind of the Leadership Coalition's theory of action on that would be that if we can consistently have our educators and students interrupting incidents when they actually occur, not 2 days later and not after an investigation, but in the moment when they occur, that's actually going to do more to shift the culture of the district than, you know, like extensive trainings and things like that.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you very much.
Other questions, comments? Leela?
Thank you. Appreciate it. I had a couple of questions. The first is pretty short. On the dashboard, what would findings look like? Would it be like sustained or like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we receive the reports and then we investigate. And then there are times that we determine if it is bullying or if it's not bullying. And so that's where the findings would come. So we might have, out of 3 cases that have been reported to us with bullying, 1 has been determined to be an actual case of bullying. So that's where the findings is.
Okay, that is helpful. And then back to an initial slide where we talked about like separating offenders and targets. Mm-hmm. We started this conversation in policy sub around like school discipline policies, but I'm just curious how like restorative practices plays into the language that we use. Because I think language is important and how we talk about our students, and the word offender stood out to me, and I just wondered if there was an opportunity to think more about the language that we use before it's like widely shared with students.
Yeah. So the language that's used, whether it's target or offender, is part of the definitions that we use with the state. So when we do bullying and harassment, that's the language that we use. We don't use that language with the students. It's our formalized language. And referring to the restorative piece that you mentioned, when we do separate the students, we explain, we're very clear with them around why are we separating you. So we give them an explanation. Listen, we have to investigate this right now. So everyone needs a little bit of space from each other in order for us to be very clear and do the work that we need to do. We're going to keep you updated as to what's happening along the way, but for the time being, we need everyone to just have some space from each other in order for us to do this investigation. So although it seems very formal in this presentation, when we do speak with the students, we really try to make sure that they understand why we're doing it and what the next steps are.
I just want to point out that I think it's probably a good sign that we're not able to get too granular with the data, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously none of it's good, but the fact that there's so little of it is good.
I always put the caveat on that we hope it's not because of underreporting.
I want to talk about the dashboard as well, because I like the data. And I'm curious, is the dashboard, the biannual dashboard, is that something that we're going to track so we can see sort of history on that as things evolve from each reporting period each year?
And additionally, too, if we feel like we need to report in a different fashion, this year, when we launch it, is going to be our first year really experimenting with it and seeing how the users really work with it. And if we get feedback of like, I'd like it more, we'll try to do that. But once again, it's relying on that sample size, which if it's too small, we're not going to note it, so the information will be blank.
Thanks. And what we're going to see in terms of reported is reported in those 3 groups of incidents that you would communicate on. So people might see there's 5 incidents of hate and bias that are reported on the dashboard, but we will not have necessarily seen 5 emails to the entire community about those incidents.
Correct.
Because they happened in a classroom or in a one-on-one setting.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, that was the dashboard, I think, was the middle ground we were trying to reach. I think the tension around communication is the tension between being really transparent and, members of impacted communities having a good understanding of what is going on and that desire to understand what goes on. And on the flip side, creating a culture where our communication induces trauma on its own. And induces a traumatic response, because there are individuals who may not necessarily be impacted because, something happened in an elementary school in 3rd grade that we communicated with the classroom about. But when you send that to the entire district, there becomes kind of a response to that is, and I don't know what the right word is, but it has an impact that can carry unintended consequences to it in terms how people react. So I think, that was a real point of discussion with Leadership Coalition, and what was clear is there was no consensus that we could reach. There were absolutely individuals that said, we want to know every single time something happens anywhere. And that valid viewpoint, right? They feel like they need that level of information. And there were other people that say, I keep getting these messages and it causes me more worry getting the messages than not. And so we really just tried to be thoughtful about what are the layers where we're really working with the group that's impacted in order to, the primary goal is to make sure that we're educating the community, right? And so if something's happening at a classroom level and all students were aware of something that happened in a classroom, we need to make sure we educate at the classroom level. Similarly, when we start to broaden that beyond a classroom level and go to whole school communities or targeting communities of people publicly, then we need to make sure our response helps to educate and heal the whole community. And so that was the overarching philosophy. And I just want to recognize not everyone will feel fully satisfied by that.
Tori.
So I read through the whole protocol as well, and I appreciate the deep thought that went into that. I have dealt with that through both a military lens and National Sporting Federation lens. It's a really hard thing to do. So thank you for that. I'm also thinking about the dashboard, and I mean, I get that we're using this as a communication tool, but it feels like it could also be a bit of a, maybe a decision maker tool as well, just an opportunity to identify trends, and having something that's readily at hand that is easy to present to a group, as opposed to, I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of information, and it's probably not necessarily in a format that you can share with people easily. So I'll be curious to see if we find some way that we find that useful in helping us move forward.
Thank you. And to note, as I mentioned, I started collecting the data last year of all the incidents that have occurred. And what I do is if I start to see certain patterns, obviously I communicate with Peter, but I also start working with the school and saying, what is it that we can do? We are seeing X amount happening. What is the educational programming that has to happen? So those patterns and trends are being worked with, and to your point, and the data dashboard is going to be a little bit of a different piece of it, but we are doing that work internally.
Vikram.
Is this going to be linked to the new diligence site for us to look at?
This will just be on the district website, so anyone can see it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jen. All right, we are now moving on to our ongoing business, which is subcommittee and member reports. First one, Andrew, did Health Insurance Trust meet today?
The Acton Health Insurance Trust met this morning, November 15th, 2024, at the Edmond Building. And the trust, as you currently know, is run-out period. We're having ceased self-insurance earlier this year, meaning that the HIT is only responsible for claims for services provided prior to June 30th of this year. That responsibility extends to insured provided through Harvard Pilgrim for a total of 12 months, ending in June of next year, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, ending a total of 24 months in the June of 2026. Key to this is the fact that as time goes on, our bills from Harvard and Blue Cross will shrink. As we have a deposit on hand at Blue Cross Blue Shield, currently no payments from the district or town will be necessary. A current deposit on hand is about $669,000, and all future charges are going to be deducted from that. The trust won't make any additional payments unless the deposit is depleted before the end of the 24-month period. Blue Cross will release any excess funds after that run-out time to us, in turn, to the town, after June 2026. To give you an idea, though, our October charge was $7,000, and it'll be deducted from the current deposit. We also received our final prescription rebate. We were doing quarterly prescription rebates of $245,000, and that's being refunded to the trust. Our next meeting will occur in December at a time that does not conflict with other end-of-year merriment.
Thank you. Capital sub will skip for next time. I have an email from Liz about policy subcommittee. Met on Friday, November 8th at 7:30 via Zoom. Members of the resource force and Kate Crosby were in attendance, and there was a thorough discussion about the sustainability policy, which will be brought for a first read at our next meeting. The subcommittee also reviewed policies that will be voted at our next meeting. So we'll have a first read of sustainability and a second read of a couple of the policies that we saw at our last meeting. Policy subcommittee's next meeting is Friday, November 22nd at 7:30 a.m. via Zoom. Elementary Budget Task Force. Tori, you guys met on Tuesday.
We did. Here in the elementary administration building auditorium. So Nate and David James shared the NSK 12 findings from the study of the elementary schools. So I'm going to give you a little more detail because we all got to sit through the training. So now you get to hear how this actually fits with our own district. So things we're doing well include saving money through open enrollment, which maintains class sizes close to school committee guidelines. There is no wasted money in staffing. It costs us about $300,000 in transportation, which is about 0.3% of our overall budget. Ending open enrollment would result in 4 to 6 additional classes at an additional teacher cost of $400,000 to $700,000. So maybe didn't see that one coming. We are also balancing our staff reductions with meeting student needs. Using our coaches primarily for coaching. Apparently, that is not necessarily something that happens everywhere. We are preparing students for middle school while maintaining each elementary school's individuality. And we are maintaining a sense of mutual respect between community and teachers. Another thing that Nate really highlighted was something he thought was pretty special. Some areas of potential opportunity include using equity formulas to balance loads of specialist staff by need across schools, prioritizing student-facing time and making group sizes and compositions more efficient, shifting to more direct coaching rather than curriculum support outside the classroom, considering whether our $600,000 investment in general education classroom assistants might be used differently, such as for specialized staff, and considering how specialist teachers might be shared across elementary schools if other duties are taken off their plates. And while not specifically budget related, nearly everyone interviewed by NSK 12 when they talked about open enrollment mentioned that our balance of school demographics don't necessarily reflect the demographics of our community. That might be a topic for further conversation in other forums. The next meeting of the Elementary Budget Task Force will focus on prioritizing opportunities and will be on Tuesday, December 3rd, right here in the Administration Building Auditorium at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. And you have 2 meetings left before you bring recommendations to the school committee, is that right?
That is the plan.
No pressure. Okay, let's see here. We'll go through some of the liaisons for the folks who are here. ALG, has ALG met since we last met, Tori? No. I'm looking, I can report on Boxborough Select Board and Boxborough Finance Committee. So the Boxborough Finance Committee has met twice since we last met. Their last meeting was Tuesday the 12th. And the Finance Committee in Boxborough has come together with a recommendation of a no more than 6% increase in assessment to the town of Boxborough. That's something that we will take to the Budget Subcommittee and discuss next Monday when the Budget Subcommittee meets. And then the Boxborough Select Board met last night, and they have opened their annual town meeting warrant and have a special town meeting coming up as well. Who else has liaisons that they have joined that they want to report on? I think CPAC has met since we last met, right?
The CPAC met on the 30th of October, and there was a lot of discussion actually about the new IEP, and you know, that's an area of concern and developing understanding, but you know, something that is definitely you know, crucial in terms of accessing both understanding of what's going on with their kiddos and the way to move forward. So I hope that, I know Amanda's still here, she could speak to it more intelligently than I can, but I think it's my understanding from listening to the meeting is that that's something that the administration is aware of and helping to work through.
Thank you. Any other updates from anybody? All right, we're on to the school committee goal update. Anybody have any public outreach that they've been involved in since we last met that they want to report on? I will share that Tori and I both, well, along with Peter, were at the MCAS conference last week. There were MCAS, MASC. Same letters, different order. I need that language curriculum to help me out here. There were some, as I shared with Ginny, there were some good sessions and there were some sessions that I had to leave in the middle of. But some of the highlights for me were a session on the legislative process and some of the things that we can be doing better to engage with our legislators and some just sort of the understanding of the process there. And so I think that we'll be reaching out to our legislators following their visit here to see how we can work with them more. There was an update on the collective bargaining process and some of those things that are going on around the Commonwealth right now as well. Tori, did you have anything that you wanted to share from your sessions that you visited?
I wasn't smart enough to walk out, but I was at least well-behaved and kept my mouth shut in a couple of occasions. I think probably the one I enjoyed hands down the most was the presentation on the Dignity Index, and I would encourage everybody to just look that up. It's dignityindex.us. It is a way of thinking about when we are having conversations with people who might not agree with us, or talking about people who might not agree with us. How do we do that in a way that allows us to have a civil conversation instead of displaying such contempt that we all just end up angry with each other? One of the things I really liked about it was that they gave us a link to a version that is designed for use with kids as well. And I think that was something I walked out of going, I can see this being useful in many, many, many things that I do. I attended a session on Portrait of the Graduate. When we get the final link to the slides, I'll maybe pass that, or you can pass it on, but the final video is worth watching. It's well done. The central office team at Dighton Rehoboth puts a lot of effort into their branding and production, no pressure, but it's really neat. It's worth looking at. And then finally, I went to a session on equity audits and inquiry cycles, which really focused on the use of street-level data to produce very specific recommendations, and it was very reminiscent of listening to our educators talking about MTSS, and it made me feel like in a lot of ways we are asking a lot of the right questions in the right ways. So.
Thank you. This part of the agenda and our communication goal is also our school committee engagement actions update, and I think I would be remiss if I did not echo Dr. Peterson's comments at the beginning of the meeting. We had, as of this time yesterday, only one person not attending the meeting, and then we've had multiple illnesses and multiple conflicts, which I totally understand, but we were one person away from not having a quorum and being able to do our business this evening. So, you know, as I look around the table, thank you to those of you who've attended. I'm sorry to those of you who are not feeling well. I totally understand that. But I think we have to do better for our community. We have to show up and do this important work. There were two extremely valuable presentations tonight, and I appreciate the attention and the engagement from those who were in the room. I hope that our committee members who are not here take advantage of watching the video, and please send questions and comments over to Peter and myself, and we'll make sure that those get addressed as well. But we're doing our community a disservice by not all showing up to our meetings. And with that, we'll move on to consent agenda. So items on the consent agenda do not usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to hold an item for discussion and a separate vote. I'll read each item, and if a member would like it held, please say hold. Members do not have to have attended a meeting to vote on minutes. Item 1, approval of ABRSC meeting minutes of 10/24/24. Item 2, approval of ABRPTSO's $7,400 donation to RJ Gray Junior High School. Approval of United Way's $7,000 donation to community education. Approval of PTSO grant of $1,500 to the ABRHS Community Service Program. And approval of warrants as presented in the packet of 11/14/24. Seeing that no items have been held, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
That would be Tori and Leela. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. And I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
That'd be Tori and Leela again. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Have a great evening.